lot of things about hammers that need to be described, and of course the hammer is the quintessential foundational tool for blacksmithing, and it's my personal opinion that making your own hammers is kind of almost spiritually important for blacksmithing, but if not spiritually, it's certainly functionally important. This is the first hammer I ever got. I got this along with a 100-pound anvil with another hammer for $100 when I was 18. I don't use this for blacksmithing. It's too light in general, and the peen, in my opinion, is too narrow. However, this is not unusual for blacksmith's hammers. This is a cross peen hammer. In order to work parallel to the edge of the anvil, the handle needs to be square to the anvil. This is one that I made, which I think is a better cross peen hammer. It's heavier. It has a square face, not an octagonal or a round face, but it still has a regular 90-degree cross peen. And then this is the hammer that we're making in the video, which is a square-faced hammer with a diagonal peen, which means if the peen is parallel to the edge of the anvil, the handle is out of the way. And I'm going to show you why I like that. A regular cross peen, if you've got a bar going this way and you want to spread it this direction, it works fine. But for drawing out this way, I mean, if you can see my elbows, my whole body position is just wrong, which I'm burning my hands already. It's very awkward. I can hardly stand to do it. However, if I have a diagonal peen hammer, it's very easy. And if you back up with a camera, you can see the whole motion. I can lift the hammer high. I can see what I'm doing. The handle is never in the way, and I'm not burning my hands. I can also work using the edge of the anvil as a fuller, and you can see that my body position is all very nice. I'm just doing this to illustrate another aspect of the cross peen, is that you can get inside of corners because my handle is not in the way. It's simply not possible to do that with this hammer. I'm going to be at an angle or burning my handle up or whatever. I can't do that. But here I can get in there and get right into the corner. And the marks that the hammer's making are correctly perpendicular to the line of the bar. So you can see it's just a way that I can have correct body alignment, correct alignment with the work. This is the blank for making this hammer. The first thing that you want to decide in making any hammer is how much it's going to weigh. And what we're aiming for today is about 2 3/4 pound diagonal peen forging hammer. I think for general use that's a good sized hammer. This blank is 4 inches long, and by calculation and by scale it weighs 3.2 pounds. The reason I want it to weigh more than the finished piece is because there's some weight loss due to scale and fire scale that comes off, and there's some weight loss due to grinding. We're not going to lose much material. This is a pretty effective use of material. In my opinion, if you can make your hammer be balanced, that is physically balanced on the handle, that's an advantage, because when you're turning the hammer to use the back end or the front end, the resistance to rotation is least if it's very closely balanced. So what I do is I make my hole in the middle of the blank. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Sharpie mark in the area that I want to mark. The precision of layout is important. I have made many hammers without doing any layout, just eyeballing the punching. And I have a pretty good success rate, but it's nearly 100% on here of getting things in the right place. And I'm going to set my, my combination square at 1 5/8. And if we go 1 5/8 from either end, and this was cut with a bandsaw, so they're nice square cuts. Now I'm going to have 3/4 of an inch, or close to right around 3/4 of an inch between them. I'll mark the other side. The important thing is that these are equidistant. So I set it at 1 5/8. Now I can check to see if it's in fact 3/4. It's a hair more than 3/4. Not to worry. I want it so that I punch the hole exactly in the middle. And now, if it was 1 5/8, I want to set this at so that I find the center. And in the case of finding the center, I'm going to mark it this way. I'm also going to turn it around here, because then if I have any inaccuracy in how I set my square, I can split the difference. Like in this case, you can see the marks are ever so slightly apart. So now we're going to use a center punch and a hammer and mark these points here. The distance here is 3/4 of an inch. When we use the punch to punch the hole for the eye, these points are going to be 1 inch apart. We're going to stretch the middle of this in an hourglass shape, like this, by forging, and that will stretch it out. And it also, we're going to forge it to 1 1/16 inch wide. It stretches it out, puts these 1 inch apart, and makes the cheeks of the eye, these parts, thinner, so that when it's finished, the eye doesn't protrude beyond a straight line going between the face and the peen. I'm going to take this to the anvil and make the punch marks and put it in the fire to get it warming up, and then we'll go to the blackboard. I'm getting the punch right in the middle. One blow. Now this is one of these little subtle things, but it's kind of fun. Like this sits nicely on the anvil now, but when I turn it over, now it's got rock to it, because the punches actually made material stand proud. So for doing the second punch marks, I'm putting it over the hardy hole. So, well, it still isn't exactly straight, but it's good enough. It's all set to go. I'm going to put it in the fire. All I'm doing here is deepening the punch marks that we made cold, because the subsequent forging into the hourglass profile squashes the punch marks, and they're not much good if I can't see them when I'm done. Right in the middle. One 1/16. Now I'm going to chamfer it slightly after I blend here. So I am 1 1/16 across here. In fact, I'm 4 3/4 of an inch long, and I've chamfered it slightly, and I think you can see this. The punch marks have moved into little lines, like I kind of think of them like the belly button. So now the punch marks are even more clearly telling us the centeredness side to side, which is very critical for this hole. When we punch the hole, if there's more material on one side than the other, then the swelling will disproportionately go out in the thinner part. So it's very important to have the same amount of material on both sides. The interesting thing about this punch is that it is designed to pre-drift for the hammer. So it has a slight taper at this end, and then it swells up pretty quickly, because I'm going to be following it with this drift. So this is amongst the most critical things of making this, that is centering this mark. So I'm centering it pretty much between those line marks. I'll make one mark, see if I like it. I want to adjust it ever so slightly. Pretty good. Okay, I got enough heat that I probably can just go ahead and start punching. I want you to notice how I move the piece and intentionally misalign the punch. That keeps it clear in the hole. And it makes it come out easier. I'm cooling the punch all the way to wet and then putting graphite on it. And take to the anvil. So the punching is complete. The plug is just a little hung up in there, so I'm going to knock it out. So this is what came out, and if you bring the camera closely, you can look down and you can see the hole, you can see the remnants of the punch marks. This is the plug, and that's what it looks like. I'm going to take another heat. There's a center punch mark on the drift that tells me how far to go. I'm checking to make sure that it's square every which way, and it is. I want to look at the under. This is the handle size. This is where it will actually be coming in. Oops. So there's what I've got. Just refining the chamfers. This is going to be the flat face of the hammer. I just want to make it look pretty. It's hard to judge it once you've forged the diagonal in. It's hard to see alignment. So I just got that looking the way I want. Turn it around, and then we're going to forge the other end. Looks good. That's all there is to it. It's really important that when you're operating the hammer that the diagonal is vertical, because if you look at this, the cross section in the center is not square anymore. It's wider than it is tall. And so you can't see a diagonal correctly. So this is the finished, normalized hammer blank the scale has been removed by soaking it in vinegar and then bead blasting it. And you can see the deformation at the end of the peen, that's called fish lips. And I'm going to cut the fish lips off, but they're smiling at you. What I've done here is just rough cut off the fish lips. You can grind them off. It just saves a little time to cut them off. So this is the rough ground hammer, and there's a couple things I want to describe to it that aren't obvious from a distance. The peen is essentially dead flat, maybe a tiny bit of crown, but essentially dead flat. And then there's a radius here. That radius is a matter of personal preference. I find this kind of radius, which is, what is it actually? It's probably about a 1/2 inch radius, maybe 3/8 of an inch radius, has the most use. I use blunter tools for some things. I rarely use anything sharper. The face was rough ground, exactly flat, but then I relieved it so it's flat in the middle, but it's relieved at the edges a little bit. That's because no one can hammer perfectly, and if you're going to be off a little bit, you don't want to have a sharp edge that hits the anvil or your work. And then it's rounded on the edges. One of the reasons, or main reason, for having a square face is that you can use the edge of the hammer as a fuller, same as this. So if I'm hammering along here and I want to do a little fullering, I can just fuller with the edge of the hammer. You can't do that with a round hammer. So here you can see, in the center you can see the scratch marks, which is the part of the dead flat surface. And I'm going to actually round this a little bit more now. I've taken it to 120 grit on the belt sander. Now you don't have to have a 2x72 belt grinder to make a hammer. I made many hammers with angle grinders. You can use files, and you can do your finish work with sandpaper. In fact, I used to always finish them with wet and dry sandpaper, and I just rubbed it like this. It does a fine job. So what I'm going to use here, this is a 3-inch Scotch-Brite little angle sander, and it's just a zillion times faster. And I'm just going to get the scratch marks out. No sharp corners, nicely relieved on the ends. looking on the face to see if I can see any scratch marks from the original grinding, and I see a few, so I'm going to get those out. Now there's just a little bit more crown, so you can see I can have my hammer angle a little bit off, and I'm not going to be hitting the corners of the hammer. Hammers are relatively easy to make. Anvils are very, very difficult to make. And so I want the edges of this hammer such that I would have to have a really wild blow in order to hit the edge on the anvil. It can happen. It can certainly happen with less experienced people. So I want it slightly rounded, so I've got a little bit of leeway this way. And when I harden it, which we're going to do here shortly, I want the center to be really, really hard, and I want the edges to be slightly soft. Now, the hardening process is going to want to do the opposite. The edges are going to harden more because they'll cool more quickly. We will temper those edges. My object is to have the edges of the tool slightly softer than the anvil face. If it's a really hard anvil face, these will be a little softer. If it's a soft anvil, sorry, can't help you. The hammer's going to dent it. But the center of it cannot dent the anvil because it only touches when it's in dead flat, in which case it's not going to make a dent. And the cross peen, the diagonal cross peen, the same thing. And I've knocked off the corners so that if I have a misblow, I'm not having something that's going to tend to chip the hammer. So we've got a couple hammers here, and let's harden them. We're going to get this to Rockwell 60 or 61. I didn't write the rules of metallurgy, but I'm telling you that's how hard we're going to get it, and we'll show you. I'm going to use this double-headed torch. I call it the dueling cobras. These are oxypropane torch tips. Now, you can buy torch tips and make something like that, I suppose. I couldn't find one, so I actually made these, and I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole nother video, I suppose. And then I would be like, lawyers would be after me. But in fact, it works quite well. So what this gives me the ability to do is heat both ends without heating the middle or without overheating the middle, getting it to the correct temperature, and then we're going to go over here to the double-headed quench, and we'll hold this down here, obviously, with tongs, and we'll cool it with fast running water. Now, you can quench the hammer in a tub of water, but when you put hot steel in water, it boils. And then you have a little gas that for at least a moment is at the surface of the hammer, which slows the cooling. So by having a spray, you don't develop gas and it just gets harder. I've done hundreds and hundreds of these. I've never had one crack. I've never had one chip, and they're Rockwell 60. 60. I am the Great Oz. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's only going to take a moment to shine these back up. What we've done is just polished off the little bit of fire scale that we produced, and the geometry had already been established. You might notice that the whole hammer has changed color. That's because it did get hot. It got probably 500 degrees or 600 degrees and made tempering colors. If you look closely here, you can see this line. That's indication of how there was a critical change in how hot it got. It probably got to austenite right about to there. You can see the same thing here. Those are good signs, things we're looking for. So what I've done is I've only hardened the 1/4 inch at the face, and that blends in with the unhardened steel on the body of the hammer. I kind of think of it as interlocking roots, where the hardness goes into the soft. It's not technically that, but it's a way of thinking. There's no place where it's like hard all the way to here and then it's soft. It's not like a plane. It's a transition zone. I'm going to be careful not to touch any of the shiny parts because we're going to temper the edges of the hammer with the torch, and I need to have it be perfectly clean. The Scotch-Brite is clean. My fingers are not. Water is not, because it could have calcium in it. So we have to be careful of how we handle these. So I am going to carefully, and this is tricky, it takes a little bit of practice, apply just the right amount of heat to the rim to move some colors, tempering colors, into this clean steel without heating the face up. I don't want the face to get more than 300 degrees. If I'm afraid it's going to get more than 300 degrees, I have air here I'll cool it with. I do not want to cool it with water because water has minerals in it, at least ours does, and it affects the tempering colors. I want to make sure that the flame is oxidizing. I do not want to, have carbon coming out of this, because 2 reasons. One, it can kind of condense on the steel, and the other is that in order for the colors to show, you have to have oxygen. Okay, it can't oxidize without oxygen. So you'll notice that I'm going to pull the torch away periodically so I can view the colors, so that the steel is exposed to the oxygen in the air. Now, another thing that can happen, and the hammerhead is ever so slightly warm now, but if it's too cold, the byproducts of combustion from the torch include water vapor, which condenses on here if it's cold, and it forms a little layer of rust. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to warm this up ever so slightly, not very warm, so that I don't get any condensation. I'm going to do that in here, in the eye, so that I don't have any flame contact with the part I'm working up here. It doesn't have to be very warm. A little warmer than that. This is a little trick that took me a little while to learn, but you just don't want any condensation. All right, now it's warm. Now I got to get down to business. I'm going to direct the heat below where I want the tempering colors, and then I'm going to move up. So I'm preheating here, but I want to do this quickly so that I don't get too much heat in the face, and then I'm going to go along here. I call it painting with fire, and fast is good. You can see I can really control this, and I'm not getting any bronze color in the face, but I got to go a little quicker on the subsequent ones because the whole thing is heating up a little bit. There you go. If you look very closely, you'll be able to see that there's a little bit of bronze that's seeping up on here, but there's the main part of the head is still cool. I mean, it's actually hot. It's burning my finger, and I've made fingerprints there, but we don't care now. I don't really need to cool this off, but I'm going to do it just to be super sure that I don't temper the face. So in fact, what I've done is I've made it down here is actually quite soft now, and it's progressively harder, and the tempering goes slightly beyond where you see that bronze color. I know this from experience. Now, I don't need to warm it up now because it's already pretty warm, and this side is very easy. I do it second because I'm able to use the heat I already put into it. So here, the cross peen is used essentially only on hot stuff. I want it really hard, but I don't want the ends hard because I don't want to chip. But these are pretty quick. I probably don't have to do any preheating to speak of. Little bit, ready, get set, go. Just like that. And just remember, you have to get the torch away from it in order for the colors to show. Otherwise, it's not getting oxygen. So that was a good job. That went very well. Better than sometimes. So now we've got a finished hammer. And it's kind of pretty too.